Hi, I'm Roxy Keller, and I am continuing to bake my way through the Great British Baking Show challenges. And this challenge starts finals week for the season that was recorded in 2017. So, finals week, of course, is going to include any type of bake, and they're all going to be complicated. Today, I'm doing the signature challenge, and the bakers were challenged to make 3 different types of bread. One of them had to be shaped or braided in some way. One had to be flavored with fruit or seasonings or something like that. And the third one had to use an alternative grain, so something in addition to or instead of wheat flour. They asked the bakers to make 12 loaves of bread, so 4 of each of the 3 different types. Mine might end up not being loaves exactly, more like small buns. This is a lot of bread, a lot of ingredients required, and I just want to make sure anything I make is going to be eaten. For the shaped recipe, I'm using a recipe from Bake From Scratch magazine. This is volume 2, and I'm making they call it braided Mazanek. I've never heard of that, but it's a Czech Republic recipe that is made for Easter. We're a little bit past Easter at this point, but it just looks like a lovely recipe. It contains amaretto, golden raisins, marzipan, so almond and orange flavoring. For the flavored, I'm going to use a recipe I found on the internet at simplyrecipes.com, and I decided to do it. I don't know if you can see that picture. They're just so cute. They're like little curly S's, and they contain saffron. It calls for cardamom as well, and again, I don't want to spend a lot of time making something with cardamom and then not liking it. So I researched what other flavors would go well with saffron, and there are many: cinnamon, fennel, lots of things. Since I have this tarragon that I forgot to use in my last bake, I'm going to add tarragon and a chai spice. So hopefully that'll be good. The saffron makes it that beautiful yellow color. Then for the alternative grain recipe, I'm making a dark pumpernickel rye bread. Now, my grandmother used to buy a dark pumpernickel bread, and I don't remember if I liked it as a kid, but I love it as an adult. And I've never made one, so I wanted to see if I could make one that was as good as that tastes. So it contains cocoa powder and molasses and rye flour, and some regular bread flour too. So yeah, should be interesting. I'm looking forward to giving it a try. I tried to find recipes that were all a little bit shorter. I think individually, each one would take about 2.5 hours. The contestants were only given 3 hours to make 3 different kinds. So I'm not real sure how they did that, but I think if I practiced and figured out the right order to do things, I probably could do it in 3 hours, but I'm sure I won't today. So 3 breads, all yeasted breads, different flavors, different fillings, different ingredients. So hopefully they'll all be good. Let's get started. I'm going to start with making the braided Mazanek. The braided Mazanek calls for amaretto-soaked golden raisins. So I'm going to start that because it needs to sit for about 30 minutes. And once I get that going, then I'm going to start with the dark pumpernickel rye bread. In a medium saucepan, I need 120 grams of amaretto, which you'll recall for thin liquids that are similar in viscosity to water. The grams is equal to milliliters. Smells good. 60 grams of water. I'll bring that to boil on the stove top and then add 2 cups or 256 grams of golden raisins. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the British call golden raisins sultanas, and then the dark raisins raisins. And the golden raisins come from white grapes, and the dark ones come from purple grapes. That came to a boil, so now I'm adding the 256 grams of golden raisins to the hot amaretto water mixture. Cover that and set it aside for 30 minutes. The dark pumpernickel rye bread recipe comes from Red Star yeast, which is the yeast I always use. I always use the platinum yeast. One thing that kind of annoys me, though, is they have not put the measurements in grams. Come on, people, get with the times. So I guess I'm going to just use 125 grams for the weight of 1 cup of flour. 125 grams of bread flour. 5 teaspoons of cocoa powder. 5 teaspoons of cocoa powder weighs 11 or 12 grams. 1½ teaspoons of granulated sugar, about 7 grams. 1½ teaspoons of salt, and I just bought pink Himalayan salt. Let's see how that goes. I need 3/4 of a teaspoon of onion powder, and I have dried minced onion. I don't have onion powder, so I'm going to grind some up in my mortar and pestle. What's nice is that I actually have a 3/4 teaspoon measuring. 3/4 teaspoon of onion powder. And last but not least is the yeast. It always makes me laugh. They'll put all the possible measurements of a package of yeast. 1/4 of an ounce, 7 grams, or 2¼ teaspoons. Oh, it makes me laugh. Whisk that. Next is 3/4 of a cup plus 2 tablespoons of brewed coffee. And again, we don't drink coffee, so I'm going to just add some espresso powder to warm water. It's really important here to measure the temperature of your water. Mine has already gone down to 118. It should be, they say, somewhere between 120 and 130. 118 will be fine, but just make sure it's not over 130, because then that will start to kill the yeast. And I'm using espresso powder. It doesn't tell you how to make, a cup of coffee. It just tells you how to make espresso, and it says 4 tablespoons of water and 1 tablespoon of espresso. So I'm just going to use 1 tablespoon in my amount of water here. I got a new paddle attachment with the rubber on both sides. We'll see how it works. Into the bowl of the stand mixer with the paddle attachment. We're going to mix this, and then I have a couple of other ingredients to add. Two tablespoons of vegetable oil and 2 tablespoons of dark molasses. Now I need to blend this with the paddle attachment for 4 minutes on medium speed. That was 4 minutes. So now I'll switch the attachment out to the dough hook and add the rye flour. Again, they call for 1 cup, so I'm going to use 125 grams. With the mixer running with the dough hook, I'll add the rye flour. Then I am to add up to 1 more cup of bread flour to make it a good forming dough. Then I'll let it run for 7 minutes. What's funny is it has a funny smell. You know, onion powder and cocoa, molasses, coffee. Very strange. This is what it looks like before adding any more bread flour. In this bowl, I just put 40 grams of bread flour, so I'm going to start with that. I'd like to know how much I add. So typically when I have bread dough that is being kneaded by the dough hook, the dough crawls up the hook and stretches all of the dough down in the bottom. This isn't quite crawling up yet. I don't know if that's because of the vegetable oil in it or if that means I need more flour. I'm going to add 20 grams more. 20 grams of bread flour. I really think that's starting to be a firm ball. I'm going to add 20 more grams of bread flour. It's definitely climbing up the hook now. That's good. One of the reasons I think I'm okay with adding more flour is that I do know that it takes a little time for the flour to absorb the water, and as it sets a lot of recipes call for an autolyse step before they start proving, just to let the flour absorb the water. This one doesn't call for that, so if it looks a little dry at first, I'm not going to worry about it because I think the flour needs time to absorb the water. Okay, so that was a total of 80 grams of flour, or about 2/3 of a cup, if a cup weighs 120 grams. I'm now going to let this knead for 7 minutes. I'll scrape it off of the dough hook every couple of minutes. That will continue to knead, and I'm going to start the braided Mazanek in my second mixer bowl. I'm going to put 300 grams of warm milk and 2 packs of yeast. That needs to sit for 10 minutes. Okay, so the next recipe, the braided Mazanek, calls for 1 1/4 cups of whole milk, and I don't have whole milk, so I used 1/4 cup of heavy whipping cream and 1 cup of 2% milk. I heated that in the microwave, 112, and I'm going to add 2 packs of yeast. I want to see the yeast activate, which again is probably not necessary, but this recipe calls for it. So the Red Star yeast recipe didn't call for it because they trust that their yeast is ready to go. My dark pumpernickel rye dough is ready to sit and prove. And I got these cool bread proving bowls. So they have straight sides and a straight bottom, so you can see when it actually doubles in size. Can't see that in a round bowl. So lightly grease it. I just figured out what it smells like. Soy sauce. Weird. A little bit of wet fingers. I'm just going to press that down a little bit. So it's about at the bottom of this line, half a quart or half a liter, I'm not sure how much. I'm going to put this over on my proving mat. It's a Vivo Sun heat mat that regulates the temperature. I have it set to 77 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a mat that I also use for starting seedlings in the spring. But it works great as a proving mat. So it has a lid. I'll just lightly put a piece of plastic over this. And it says to let it rise until indentation. This is a new one. Let it rise until indentation remains after poking dough with finger down to second knuckle. That's a long way. Let's hope I can see it rise. I don't know how that yeast is probably suffocating with all those other ingredients in there, but I'm just kidding. We'll see how it goes. I have about a minute and a half for the milk and yeast to sit. I hate activating it in milk because you can't tell if it's getting foamy, because that's kind of what the foam looks like, is milk. I have one little problem with this recipe, problem in the sense that it calls for orange zest, and I don't have any fresh oranges, so this is kind of crazy, but this is a dried lemon zest. Who knows? It smells like lemon. I'm going to add this to that milk so that it can rehydrate. It calls for 1.5 teaspoons, but that's fresh, and dried is going to be a lot more concentrated. So I'm just going to add 1 teaspoon of dried lemon zest. Okay, for the braided Mazanek, I'm now going to add this milk and yeast mixture that I added lemon zest to the bowl of my stand mixer. To that, I need to add 120 grams of heavy whipping cream. Then it calls for 60 grams of fresh squeezed orange juice. Again, no orange juice. So I'm going to add 60 grams of orange juice concentrate. I'm going to warm this up just a little bit. I don't want to put that frozen right on top of the yeast. It's not going to hurt the yeast, but it'll just slow it down. I'm going to be really careful, maybe just like 30 seconds, just give it a little warmth. Okay, 86 degrees, that's great. Okay, the cream orange juice mixture is going in. Now it says to put this on the mixer and add sugar and eggs, but my low speed is high enough that I feel like it's just going to make a mess. So I'm going to mix it with a whisk first and then put it on. 1 cup or 200 grams of white granulated sugar, 2 whole eggs, plus 2 egg yolks. These are all large eggs. Two large eggs plus 2 large egg yolks. Whisk. 2½ teaspoons of salt, ½ teaspoon of almond extract. I hope this is good because this calls for a lot of flour. In total, almost 10 cups, 1,220 grams. But not for this first round. First, I'm just going to add about 4½ cups or 563 grams of all-purpose flour. Now, I don't know why some breads don't actually use bread flour. If anybody knows, please tell me. I'll just have to Google it, I guess, if no one knows. Now I'm going to start adding this flour a little bit at a time, still again just using my hand whisk until it starts to get a little thicker, then I'll put in the paddle attachment. If your mixer has a slow or low speed, you may be fine just going straight to the mixer. Okay, I'm going to give it a try. This new paddle attachment works very well. At this point, it's kind of like a cake batter. Now I'm supposed to add 2 sticks of softened butter, and I forgot to take my butter out. So I'm going to cut these into 1 tablespoon bits and soften them in the microwave. With the mixer running, I'll add 2 sticks or 226 grams of salted butter, 1 tablespoon at a time, and softened butter. For good measure, I'm going to scrape down the sides, but this new paddle is really helping. Now it's time to add the raisins, which I will strain those in just a minute. But the other ingredient we're adding that I haven't mentioned is grated marzipan. So marzipan is an almond paste that used to be used a lot to cover cakes. It's still used somewhat, but it tears a lot more easily than fondant, so people usually just use fondant. And then people will make little shapes and animals and flowers and things out of marzipan. It has kind of an antique white color to it, so people use it if they want that. This recipe from Bake From Scratch has a recipe to make your own marzipan, but I just bought marzipan almond paste. You can chunk it up and put it in cookies. Lots of things you can do with it. I need to grate it, so I put it in the freezer. Don't know if I put it in the freezer long enough ago. I need 87 grams. Let's see if I can grate this. Okay, that's 87 grams, and it's very sticky. So I'm going to put a little bit of flour in here to try to separate the bits before I put it in the batter so that they don't all just clump together in one big clump. I understand you can do that with like fruits and stuff. If you're making like a banana bread or blueberry bread or cranberry bread, just mix the fruit with a little bit of flour, toss it in a little bit of flour. One thing I learned from my favorite podcaster, Rin, on home baking, is that this almond smell that you get from almond extract is from a different species of plant called bitter almond than the plants where we get the actual almond nuts that we eat. So 2 different kinds of almond. Maybe that's why it smells so different. Strange, right? When they make marzipan, they do use ground almonds or almond flour, which are one kind of almond, but then they add almond extract, which is the other kind. Very crazy. That was 23 grams of flour I added. So when I add the rest of the flour, I'll just take out 23 grams. Now I'm going to strain the raisins. Okay, with the mixer running, I'll add in the raisins and the marzipan. Okay, now it says I need to transfer this to a large bowl and then add the other 4.5 cups or 4 1/4 cups of flour because this bowl won't be big enough to hold it all. So I'll have to do it by hand. Oh, and they say to discard this. I'm not going to discard that. It's amaretto. It's probably delicious. Yep. I need to weigh out another 563 grams of flour to add, and I'm going to subtract that 23, so I'll just do 540. I'm going to try to add as much of this as I can before I switch to doing it by hand. Okay, now I'll have to turn this out onto the bench top to knead it by hand for 8 minutes. I can add up to 96 grams more of flour. It should not be sticky. It's not sticky really now, but maybe once I start kneading it. So I'm going to weigh out 96 grams of flour just so I know how much I can use. Wow, maybe I should have halved the dough. That's a lot. It is a little bit sticky on the bottom. But enriched dough is often very nice, easy to knead. It doesn't stick as much. This is not sticky. So I'm going to set the timer for 8 minutes and start kneading. Okay, I need to spray a bowl. This in there, flip it around. I think it has room to double if it gets all the way up to here. Now onto the proving mat, loosely covered, and it says it'll take about 2 hours to prove. So this is definitely not one they could do on the show unless they proved it at a really high temperature really fast, maybe. I don't know. But our rye pumpernickel bread is ready for the next step, so I'll go to that. So I think it actually did double in size. Let's see about that finger test. A floured finger up to the second knuckle, and the indentation remains. Yeah, it does. You're supposed to punch it down, get all the air bubbles out. So the instructions say to make just basically one round loaf to put on a baking sheet. I'm going to put it in a regular loaf pan, small loaf pan. I think it will be easier for people to cut off pieces if it's in a regular loaf. I know why they say to put it like that, because if you get a Reuben sandwich or something with a dark pumpernickel rye, it always has that, shape, like a hemisphere almost. But I don't know. I'm gonna do it the way I want to, and I'm rolling it because I did this with a loaf of white bread one time, and it just made it so, had such a cool pattern in the middle. Like, it was just, since you don't put any filling, you lose a lot of the spiral, but it just looks cool. So I'm going to use this, I forget what they call it, but it's 9 by 4 by 4. I'm going to spray it. I cut a piece of parchment paper so it would fit. With the parchment paper hanging over the sides, it's really easy to just lift it out. And I just need to make sure the ends are sprayed really well since they don't get any parchment paper. Right in there. Now I'll cover that, put it back on the mat, and it'll rise for 30 minutes. I'm going to set the oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, so it'll be ready when this is ready to go in. Okay, so the dark rye pumpernickel bread has risen, filled out this loaf pan, and I'm going to put a little bit of an egg white wash on it. I don't need whole egg because egg yolk makes it brown and egg white makes it shiny, and I don't need it to be brown. So I'm just going to put a little bit of egg white. The oven is preheated to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and in the ball shape on a baking sheet or in a cake pan, it's supposed to take 30 to 35 minutes. This might take about the same time, might take a little longer. I'll check it after about 15 minutes, 20 minutes. If it looks like it's getting too brown on the top, I'll put some foil on it, but they don't give a temperature, but I suspect that the internal temperature needs to reach at least 190, maybe close to 200, and then I'll take it out. By the way, I have decided not to make the third type of bread. It is the saffron bun, and as I was cleaning up, I was thinking about it, and I just realized that it's, I've done a saffron bun, so this would definitely be different, and the shape of it is super cute, and my poor tarragon gets passed up again, but yeah, since I had to make so much bread for the Mazenak, that's going to be a lot of bread for people to eat. So I just don't want to have. I guess I could freeze it, but I didn't really see that I would necessarily learn something new by doing that. So I'm just not going to do the third one. The Mazenak dough has about 1 more hour to prove, and the pumpernickel bread will come out before then. So I'll be back when that's ready. The rye pumpernickel has been baking for about 30 minutes, so I'm going to check the internal temperature. I'm glad I did because the internal temperature was 199. I checked it after 20 minutes and it was at about 145. So I set it for another 10 minutes and it's done. (200°). Looks beautiful, smells beautiful. At this point, if you want to, you can brush that with a cornstarch glaze and sprinkle on some caraway seeds, but I don't have any, so we're just going to leave it like that. It's probably doubled in size. You're supposed to be able to punch it and it comes back very slowly. I have reduced the oven temperature to 350°F. Now I'm going to try to braid these. I'm so excited. I need to line 2 baking sheets with parchment paper and spray them. I spray it the first time so the parchment paper will stay in place. I need to read more about this, but it always tells you to punch down the dough to get the air out. This one actually says to do that and then let this sit for another 5 minutes. So I'm going to do that. Okay, it's been 5 minutes, so now it's time to braid. Lightly flour the surface. Turn out the dough. Divide the dough in half. Now I need to divide this into 4 equal parts. It's going to be a 4-stranded braid. 1356. Okay, so I need 339 for each strand. $329, pretty close. Now I need to roll each one of these until it's about 15 inches long. Didn't need that flour. What you doing, Sheila? My dog's standing here just between the cabinet and my legs. Probably waiting for a piece to fall. Sounds like me. Okay, that's about 15 inches. place them vertically in front of me. This one needs some help. It keeps coming apart right there. Now, pinch the 4 together at the top. Cross the 4th one over the 2nd one. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4 over the 2nd one. Now this becomes the 2nd one. First over the 3rd. Now it becomes the 3rd. And then the 2nd over the 3rd. Okay. Okay. And you keep doing that over again. So 4th over 2nd. First over 3rd. And then 2nd over 3rd. 4th over 2nd. This does not want to stay. First over 3rd. And then 2nd over 3rd. Other than a little weirdness up here where I really didn't get it tight enough, I guess. I think that's it, other than I'd like some of those raisins to be down inside or they'll get burned. Okay. Tucking the ends under. Hopefully they're under. I'm just going to poke some of these raisins in. Okay, now we've got to egg wash that, but I'm going to braid the other one first. Actually, we have to let it sit another half an hour before. 3/16 each. $3.16 on the last one. Nice. Okay. Roll into 15-inch rolls. All right, do we remember? All right, pinch together at the top. Fourth over second. First over third. and then second. Fourth over, second, first over, third, second, first over, second. It ends up like having a braid on top of a braid. Kind of cool. Now these have to brew for another 30 minutes until they get puffy. They're heavy. Okay, it's been half an hour and they've poofed up a bit. Yeah. For the egg wash, I need 1 egg, a teaspoon of whole milk, and some sliced almonds. Whisk the egg, brush with the egg wash, I'm probably being way too particular about those, but I wanted to make sure it got everywhere. And of course, if you look at their picture, they're all perfectly on there. So, okay, now these will go into a 350-degree oven for 45 to 50 minutes until the internal temperature reaches 190 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to check them after about 30 minutes. If they're starting to get too brown, I'm going to cover them with foil. I had to put them on 2 racks, so after about 20 minutes, I'm going to switch them. Okay, well, here they are. After 20 minutes, I switched the shelves, then baked them for another 20 minutes. I just checked them both with the instant read thermometer, and the lowest was 190, but there were several spots that were up to 200. So they look pretty good. This one, the braid kind of fell apart a little bit. I'm not sure why. And this one's a little more brown think it was on top first. But I bet they'll be delicious. I'll give them time to cool and give them a try later. Okay, here they are. Let's give it a try. Looks good. That's really good. It's really good. It's moist. It's still slightly warm. I think I'll keep it in something that will keep it moist because it's sort of falling apart a little bit. My braids kind of fell apart a bit. Maybe I need to email Bake from Scratch and ask them what I did wrong. Normally when bread kind of falls apart, you think maybe you overimproved it, but I proved it as long as they said, and it's not dry. So usually when you overprove, it's also dry. And it's not dry, so yeah. Anyway, tastes good, and I think people at work will enjoy it. I already have the other one in a pan ready to go. So yeah, braided Mazanek. All right, now the pumpernickel rye. I'm gonna have to toast this one because that's how I always eat it. When I buy pumpernickel, I always toast it. So it smells good. Yeah, I think it's good. I'm going to toast a piece, put a little butter on it, then I'll taste it because that's how I know. Is it possible that homemade bread is hotter than store-bought bread? It always is so much hotter when it comes out of the toaster. And it seems to take longer to toast. It does remind me of that dark pumpernickel bread that I always used to buy. That's good. Okay, so this is the end of the signature challenge, and I've made 2 breads. I think I actually accomplished all 3 of the challenges. One was an alternate grain, one was a shaped bread, and one was a flavored bread. So I shaped and flavored this one. So I think that counts as two for 1. So next time I will be doing the technical challenge. And the technical challenge was to make ginger biscuits. Doesn't sound that difficult, but biscuits, ginger cookies, they're supposed to be like ginger snaps. And then the bakers had to decorate them with a really fine royal icing decoration. They gave them the pattern. And again, I have no idea how they got it done in the time. Only 2 of the 3 got those finished, but it is just way too much to do in the time that they gave them. But anyway, that's what's coming up next. Thanks for joining me. Bye.